And I really had to fight those voices back. Like, am I doing the wrong thing? I don't know. This is something totally new for me, but we're going to find out. Hi guys, Will Terry here, and this video is going to be called How Much Money Did I Make at Phoenix Comic Con? And hey, just got back on Monday, and it was an amazing event. So I'm going to talk about that, and I know I said that I wasn't going to talk about. I kind of said that I wasn't going to really update much more, but then I got a lot of emails from people saying, well, we still want to know how that thing's going. Anyway, I've been doing a playlist on my very first Comic-Con, which was Salt Lake back 10 months ago in September, 9 months ago, something like that. And then after that I did CTN, and then I did FanX in the spring, and then I just did Phoenix, and then next week I go to Denver. So I don't think I'm going to make a video for each event that I go to, but I think that, like, the reason that I'm doing this is because I thought, I looked and there really wasn't what I was looking for, or at least I didn't find it on YouTube. I wanted to know the stats. I wanted to know what it was going to cost me. I wanted to know the things that you couldn't find out in a 5-minute video. That seemed like all that I was finding is these little 5-minute videos and like people showing their setup, which was cool, but I wanted to know more than that. So I'm just going to tell you the stuff in this video. I'll be going over the things I learned, some interesting things that I thought I knew, and my mind was changed. Again, I'll give you the gross, and then our expenses, and what else? And then some advice. So I'll give you some advice on what I think, if you're thinking about selling your work at a convention, what my advice would be to you. Because I feel like I've grown in 10 months. I've just learned so much. Okay, so cool. So first off, before I get going, I thought I would just mention that I am signing a book contract with Random House, it's a really, really, really nice picture book, written by Marjorie Kyler, and the creative director that I'll be working with is Martha Rago, and somebody that I've known for a while, and I think she really knows her stuff, and she just is. Anyway, I heard her speak, and we actually presented together in Chicago at an SCBWI, and I just thought, wow, she really knows what she's doing. And I thought, oh, it'd be really neat to work with someone like that someday. So dreams do come true. But the reason I want to talk about that along with this Comic-Con thing is that so I got to go out to dinner with her, and this was about, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, of course I was hoping that she would also like what I was doing and maybe find a project for me. And she said, at that time, she was like, I like your color stuff, but I think what she was alluding to in her taste, she was like, do you have anything more like the Monkey and Croc book that you did, which was really white backgrounds, tons of white background space and just little spots of the characters and stuff. And I was like, no, that's the only thing I have. She's like, okay. And like, I never heard anything. And that was like 5 years ago. So then I started doing this project for the characters for Comic-Con. And if you haven't been following me, if you go on Instagram, you can see what I'm doing. I have my Instagram link below, and just in the description. So, if you're not already checking out what I'm doing, you can see what I'm talking about. I have all my characters that I've done for that and for the Kickstarter book that I just did. So anyway, so when she called me, or emailed me, she was like, we're really interested in this new kind of look you have with the characters you've been doing for your Kickstarter. So I thought that was really cool that, I went out on my own and started just doing these characters, these fan art characters. And now that's led to a book project. Specifically, the one that she liked the most, I think what she mentioned in the email, was the Tin Man with a little heart. And if I could remember to edit that in, maybe you're seeing it right now. Um, but so I think it's really cool that, it's that whole idea that if you build it, they will come. Well, if you're anxiously engaged in projects like I've talked about here on my channel before, if you're making projects, not portfolios, and you're pushing your own projects and your own IP, then other things can come out of that. I've also got some inquiries for people to use those characters in some games, so we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. If it does, I'll report about that here too. But really good contract, really good terms. I can't share those with you, but it's a really good project. Okay, and then I'll also say, if like when we went down to Phoenix, they had a record heat. So it was 118 degrees on Saturday, and that was the hottest that I've ever felt in my life. I thought I was going to die. Like I couldn't believe that anybody could live down there. And by the way, if any of you guys live down there in that area, I don't know how you do it. Like anyway. So okay. So I'm just gonna, these are notes that I jotted down, and I didn't even have time to really put them in order. So we'll just see where this kind of takes us, and then I'll also work in again my sales figures. But one thing that I thought I knew when we did FanX out here in Salt Lake City, I had the TV set up. So again, and I'll include this video in the playlist. So go back and check out if you want to see what I'm talking about. You can go and look at my other videos. But the interesting thing is at FanX, we were on kind of an end. We weren't in the middle of Artist Alley, so there was a big aisle out there, which we thought was going to be a bad thing. But there was a huge, like double wide aisle, and there were some other booths doing some like pro bono, like get your picture taken with cosplayer type things, and so anyway, there was a lot of room for people to stand around and watch the TV. And I think a lot more room for people. And it wasn't a busy con, so that it wasn't like just packed with people. And so people would kind of wander around looking for stuff. But at Phoenix, the aisles were packed with people. And because of that, people were, like trying to scoot by and stuff. And you really couldn't stand and watch the TV. I don't know if it was that but it just seemed like people just did not care about the TV set at all, which I thought was, going to be our little bait out there to attract people. And I had speed paintings of me drawing the characters really fast, and people just didn't see it. And there were only a few times where we looked out there and saw somebody watching it. We watched people as they were walking by, and from a whole table or two away, they would see our display. And I'm just looking because I just remembered to talk about something, and I don't see it in my notes. So I'm going to work that in right now. I did this, and hopefully you can see it in the video, because I think I'm going to try to work some of the video in. But anyway, I made this, I don't know what to call it, like a sign that goes out perpendicular to my booth. So most people have, a banner that goes up behind their booth. So the only way you can really see it is to be in front looking at it. But I had a circle graphic made at my printer that goes out perpendicular to the booth, kind of this way, not anyway, so that people down the rows could see it. And it worked so good. We could see people seeing it from a distance and actually passing up other tables, which I don't know if is that fair. But I mean, it's a competition, right? Everybody's setting up their stuff, and you're trying to attract people to your area. And so my idea was I wanted to give people kind of a landmark reference to where my booth was. So I put the alien that I did that's on the little kitty toy, and I put that on this circle graphic. And it was I think it's like 2.5 feet wide in diameter, so people could see that. And that worked really well. So they would see that, and we had that above the TV. So they saw that. They never saw the TV. So, interestingly enough, I'm going to take the TV out. So, and it costs about $100 extra to have electricity at your booth. So that's an expense that I will save that money. We'll save the room in the vehicle for the TV set, but we're working on it right now for Denver, but we're gonna outfit the actual TV stand that we had with kind of a mounting system to get more artwork out there so that people can see more of my prints. And I think that's going to be way better. I think it'll look better. I mean, not that the TV didn't look good. The TV looked great, but people just didn't see it. So in the other video, I was saying how it worked really well, but I think it was because there was more space to view it. So, you learn different things. Just because something works one place doesn't mean it's going to work in another place. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, let's see. I got a new backdrop. So, and on this trip, we actually got a lot of new things. Used some of the money from before. So I was in the black before. I had just basically paid off everything, and now decided to go back and spend some of my money on getting some things that would really either help us out, like a new dolly to load in our stuff, and then also this new backdrop. And I got it on Amazon. You can see it in the video. I think it was like $130 or $160. I think it was like $160 with shipping. With shipping, I think it was like $160. But it goes 13 feet high if you want it to. It doesn't have to go that high, but it also goes 15 feet wide. So when you're doing a double table, you can use it for a single table or a double table. It's really, reconfigurable to whatever needs you have. And so that's why I got that. It's also looks really clean, and it helps me display my bigger prints back there. And that's another thing. I think, some people's setups, they have their artwork behind them, and it's all behind them, and then they're out front. And I think that's a mistake, because people really can't look up close and see your artwork and see the textures and the details and stuff. Some people have their artwork all up front, and they don't have anything behind them. I think with that setup, you're also missing out on using your space. If you have everything on the table, then your space can look kind of void behind you. And I kind of feel, especially after looking at other people's setups, I think the combination between the two, having stuff behind you and up really close, is probably the best of both worlds. It lets people pick up and handle your art and look at it really close, but it also lets them see more of it because you can see it behind you. So that worked really well. People would see the stuff up front, and then they would see the display in back, and they would really start to get it. I think if you have a display that's just behind you, you're going to see people just walking by you. They just won't even see it. It's just amazing. And when you say, how could people not even see it? It's not that much further away. But you have to keep in mind, these people's retinas have been seared by the amazing amount of stuff, the visceral language of art they've been seeing all day, toys and swords and just all kinds of things to see, sculptures, crafts, just everything. And everybody's vying for their attention. So it comes down to the little things that you do. And if you don't have things up close, I think that's probably the biggest. Like if I was going to err on one or the other, I would have my stuff up close. If I couldn't afford a backdrop, I would have my stuff up close. But I would try to get that backdrop later on. Another reason to get that is a lot of the cons now, like Salt Lake, they're going in Artist Alley. They're going without pipe and drape. So when you show up, there's this vast sea of tables, and you don't really. I don't think you really want people looking through your table to who's behind you and getting distracted by that. I think you want to try to capture their attention. So that was another expense that we had, and a new thing that worked out really well. Okay, so the next thing, I'll just tell you my costs right now. So my costs, I figure, for traveling to away cons like Phoenix, or the ones I can drive one day to, like Denver, they're going to be roughly about $2,000, which is a lot of money, right? So in order to get there, in order to get set up, in order to eat, sleep, drive, put fuel in the car, rent the car, everything. It's about $2,000, including replenishing my supply of prints. So if you remember, if you watch the other videos, I've done a lot of offset prints, and I don't need to replenish those because I have tons, because I printed up a lot. But on the color prints, I have to, because they're more expensive, I'm not mass producing those. So I'm going to basically print up what I think I need for each convention, because I don't want to print. I just don't want, the prints that I'm getting are somewhere between 75 cents and $1 each. And that's just money. If you look in your flat file that you're taking to the con, that's just dollar bills sitting there going to rot out there. And if if something happens to them, or if you decide to not do another convention, I just don't want that much money sitting there. With the offset prints, yes, I have a lot of money sitting in my garage, but it's all paid for. And I did the math and figured, the first cons that I was going to do, I was going to work basically to pay that off, and which I did. And so now I have all those prints, and I did also get 8 new ones of those offset ones, so that cost came in. So I had about $3,000 worth of expenses. Again, I could have done this con. I could have done Phoenix for $2,000, but I wanted to get those extra prints to have on hand, to really, flesh out some of the sets that I had. And so, so I was looking at, I was in the hole again, $3,000. But the great news is it was an amazing show, and we made $7,300. So well into the black, and came home with some good money. And I think some people, if I were watching this video, or I were watching somebody else do a video like this, I think, well, yeah, he's promoting himself, and he's going to inflate the numbers. I mean, but go back and watch the other videos. Like in the first one, I was so stupid, I didn't even have plastic sleeves on my artwork. I mean, I was handing people a piece of paper. That's how stupid I was on the first ones, and only made $1,500 in Salt Lake. And then at CTN, I only made $1,700 something, and so and I reported that. So this is the first time that we actually really did well. It was an amazing show. I think for several reasons. One, Phoenix is a big show. It's hard to get into. I had to get a little bit of help to find the right contact to talk to ask if I could get in there, because I couldn't get in on my own. But you can get in through the waiting list process and stuff. I just wanted to expedite that, so I pulled some strings. But anyway, so got in there, and the reason that so I'm gonna tell you why I think we did so well by going through some of these other things, because I don't think it was a fluke, and I think from now on we're gonna do a lot better. I doubt that we'll do as well in the Salt Lake Comic-Con coming up in September, and the reason for that is people out here are tightwads. People out here in Utah they have a lot of people have bigger families and stuff, and they just don't spend money like they do in other cities and stuff. So I think everybody kind of reports lower numbers out here. But Phoenix was a monster show, and we did way better. My thing was, I was like, if we can just make $4,000, then that'll be good, because we'll walk away with a little bit, but we'll have all this new stuff that's helping us out there. And then I have a list of other things that we bought for that show. But again, I'm really set up now for Denver, so my costs are only going to be $2,000, and Denver's supposed to be a better show than Phoenix, so there's a chance that we'll walk away with a pretty good chunk from Denver. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of these other things, and that is, let's see. I probably should have put these in order, but let me just say this. So, and this is going to be one of my pieces of advice as well. I was going to do it at the end, but I'm going to do it now. When I first started doing this, and the thing is, no matter how much you plan, and no matter how much my computer thinks I need an update right now. No matter how much you plan and no matter how much you strategize, there's no substitute for doing. So, you're always going to learn more by doing it and having some screw ups and failures and getting burned a little bit. I mean, like, think about it. We tell our kids to go to college and spend how much money? Depending on the college you go to, you can come out of there, $50,000 in debt, $100,000 in debt. Some people are way more than that for art school, right? And you spend all that money and you get an education on how to create the art. But the business side, some people will go to actually spend that same kind of money on business school, and so the way I look at it is, if you go and do a Comic-Con and you fail and you spent $200 on a table, and maybe you spend, I don't know, $500 to $1,000 getting ready, making prints and stuff. And let's say you don't make all that money back, but the education that you get is so much cheaper than if you went to school. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't go to school, but I would say, in your mind, don't look at it as a loss. Look at it as what you're learning, because what you learn is invaluable for the future, right? So, like, if I had done the first Comic-Con and I just looked at the numbers alone, and I just said, was it worth it? Well, on paper, not even close. And even if I hadn't printed in bulk and just printed a few color copies and sat out there with my work, and it was like, this is bogus, you can't make money, and I'm not going to ever do this again. And I know that happens to a lot of people for various reasons. But again, I would look at it for the educational value. Okay. So one of the biggest takeaways is, when I first started, what I was trying to do is, I talk about this some in the other videos, but I was looking around going, what can I do that's different? So I started to say, because I looked at other booths and I was like, you're seeing a lot of the same stuff, but one thing that you're seeing at almost every booth is just tons of color. And so when you do a color piece with a colored background, most of the time, each piece, you choose the background colors based on what will look good against the character, right? So now you've got all these different background colors and all these different character colors. And then, you put those next to each other at your booth, and you've just got, it's also like you threw paint at the wall. You just got tons of different colors, and none of them really match. The style matches, but a lot of times the colors don't. And it's like it just hits you, and remember, people are looking at booth after booth after booth of just nothing but color, like tons of saturated color. And so one of the things that I purposely did when I thought, well, how can I look different, was I thought, well, I'll just do drawings on white paper. I'll just do these little crosshatch drawings, and I do them digitally, but I thought they're going to look different, and whether people like them or not, at least they're going to be different. Well, then I started putting them on Facebook. I really think in Instagram, and I think that that should be, if you're planning on doing this, that should be part of your plan along the way, is test your stuff on Facebook. If you're not getting responses on Facebook where it's free to click like, chances are nobody's going to pay money, and you're probably not ready yet. But the response that I got was interesting on Facebook and Instagram. So I was coming up with these little concepts, and people were responding to them really well, like laughing, and especially the people that didn't know me as well. The people that knew me as well were going, yeah, well, these are cool and all, but you're a color guy. Where's your color? I like your color stuff better. When are you going to start doing more of that? And I was really fighting with that whole idea along the way, because I was thinking, well, am I hurting my brand by doing these drawings that don't look anything like it? I'm basically starting a whole new style, even though it's kind of drawn the way, and it's going to have similarities to what I do, but it is totally different look as far as color goes and texture and stuff like that. And I really had to fight those voices back, like, am I doing the wrong thing? I don't know. This is something totally new for me, but we're going to find out. Again, you got to be willing to fail. So I started putting them out there. People really responded. I was getting a lot of people going, okay, getting tired, want more color. And so when I set up my booth at Salt Lake, I did both. I had color stuff out there, and then I had my characters on white backgrounds. And so my booth, even though, and it was horrible because I built that thing where we were looking out the window and all that, and it didn't have plastic sleeves for the art, and so it was just awful. But it also looked disjointed because it was like, well, what are you? Are you saturated color guy, or are you white background character guy? And it would be the equivalent if somebody set up a store inside of an Apple store. Apple's got this really clean look. They've got the light wood tones, and then if somebody came in with like tons of color and plopped that down in the middle, it just wouldn't match. And that's what I had going on, but I couldn't see it. I was like, well, I'm going to use the fan art to lure people into the other stuff that I do. And after doing Phoenix, I think that was a complete mistake. I think what I did, because in Phoenix, I didn't put any of my color stuff out there. I just branded the booth with what you're going to get here, 2 tables wide, is characters that are, I'm doing the characters that look cute, taking an adult character and making them into a kid on a white background, and some of them have a little spot of color, and people get it right away. And didn't confuse it with throwing a whole lot of other things in there. And what that does is, as people would walk along, they would walk down the row, they would look at things, we would watch them, and they'd get to our booth and they'd go, oh, and it just looks so different that it would stop them almost every time, and they would look, and even if they didn't buy anything, or even if they didn't totally stop, they'd be looking our way like, this is different. And it wouldn't have looked as different if I had all that color stuff. So I think getting that out of there really helped. Now, some people might be thinking, yeah, but Will, you're a children's book illustrator, and that's like what you're trying to push, and like aren't you trying to sell those as well? I think I really created a different business. It's the Comic-Con doing fan art thing for me. Yes, a lot of people, I went through about 500 business cards. So I had 500 business cards. They were all gone by the end of the convention. Like halfway through Sunday, I ran out. So those people, when they go to my site, they're going to see both. They're going to see the fan art stuff that they saw at the booth, but they're also going to see the other stuff. And I just think that in the end, you have to kind of ask yourself what you want. And I really want the Comic-Con booth to be really successful. And again, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it got me a children's book. So I got a children's book from doing this. So they are intertwined. But I think that separating that brand really helped. Now, another thing that I'll mention, since I'm thinking about it right now, is that there were about maybe 5 to 10 times during the show where we had anywhere from 2 to 5 people trying to buy from us at the same time. So in other words, people have their prints ready to go that they picked out of the display thing, and they're waiting for us to take the money from someone else. So it was like a line of people, like a crowd around, and people waiting, and we were selling as fast as we could for an hour to an hour and a half, and then we get a lull, and that happened about, and then then you get the sporadic sales that happen. But the other thing I noticed is the more successful you are at selling, the even more successful you'll be, because what happens is psychologically, when people see that transaction, and we gamed it a little bit too, like when people bought, and when I say we, I had my friend Wayne there with me, helping me. We've been friends since we were in school. We shared a cubicle together, and so yeah, I'm paying him to help me. And one thing that we talked about that we did was, when someone bought, we would make a conscious effort to not only thank them, thank you for buying this, but we'd hand their artwork to them high enough so that people walking by could see that they just bought and we were handing the product over to them, because what that does psychologically is it helps other people go, there's something of value happening over here. Someone just voted with their dollars and said that this is worth my money. Maybe I'm missing out by not finding out what's going on over here. So a crowd begets a crowd. So the more we would sell, the more we would sell, which it's almost unfair, because it's like, the poor guy to the right of us, he was hardly selling at all. The few times that he had people at his booth, he'd have 2 or 3 groups of people, because other people are like, we're always curious. If you see somebody and they're pointing in the air, just off the side of the road, and they're pointing to someone else up high, all of a sudden you wonder, what am I missing out on? What am I not seeing? Something cool's happening and I'm not looking, so I better look. And so that's what happens. So the more you work on your booth, the more that you work on your art, the more that you are able to change the viewers emotionally with your art. Like for us, and it's mostly the women, but we sell to a lot of guys too. But a lot of the women will see the cute from, a booth or 2 away, and they're like, oh my gosh, look at how cute it is. And I put some of those reactions in the other video. It's just hilarious. I never get tired of it, but it's just so funny that, that really resonates. And I don't know if it's because, it helps women remember when they had kids or they want kids, or I have no idea, but they're definitely drawn to that. Now the guys are too, but they won't react the same way. They won't at least outwardly react the same way. So, getting that to happen and getting a crowd around, that was a huge thing, and that's one of the reasons why we sold more. Another reason, I'm skipping all over here, but another reason why we sold more, I think, is in Salt Lake, my prices were mid-level. So I was selling prints for $7, and then if you bought, you could buy 3 for $15. And then because we didn't do that well, I got scared, and so when I went to CTN, I lowered my prices, and they were way too low. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, let's start out really low and see if we can sell a ton. And we just didn't do that much better. So we ended up basically just giving a lot of artwork away. I went down to $5 for the 8x10s, and you could buy 3 for $10, which was just extremely too low. And I just didn't have confidence. But, I was learning, where to be. And so then on Salt Lake, we went back to the 3 for $15, and that's when we made 3,100. And then in Phoenix, we raised our prices to $10 per 8x10, buy 3 for $20. And we sold more. We had more volume of actual sales, but because we were charging more, we actually made a lot more money, obviously, too, because we had more sales, but we also were charging more. And I think that the lesson there, the takeaway for me on that one is that as long as your prices are in range with what people are expecting to pay, in other words, the guy down from you is also charging $10, and everybody else around is charging $10 for a small print. To go lower, I think what happened is it probably made us look like our product was inferior. I mean, people. I think people feel like they get what they pay for. So, why is this only $5? Oh, well, maybe it's just not worth as much. Well, maybe I shouldn't buy it then. I don't know. But we certainly didn't have a problem raising our prices and charging more. So we're going to keep that, obviously. Let's see what else. Let's see. I'm trying to understand my notes here. Oh, okay. So another thing that I did, this is a good one, is if you look at the video, I have the 11x14s, and then I have the 8x10s, and people really wanted, a lot of people. Okay, let me back up. In the 11x14s, I only offer certain characters, which I don't offer in 8x10s. So you could say they're exclusive to the booth, right? So for instance, Iron Man or Wolverine, I only have them in an 11 by 14, and uh, Tim Burton stuff I only have in 8 by 10s. Just the way it worked out. Tim Burton is mostly black and white stuff. It just worked out better to be black and white. I don't feel like people feel like it's missing color. Beetlejuice is black and white. Oogie Boogie doesn't really have a lot of color. Jack Skellington doesn't have any color. Sally doesn't have a whole lot of color. So offer that 8 by 10. But then, Wolverine, you really need that hint of yellow. And so you get the picture. So, but one thing that people did was our 11 by 14s were $20 each for that print. And so people saw those prices and they were like, I really want this in 8 by 10. Do you have it in 8 by 10? We probably got asked that 300 times. I'm just throwing out a number, but it was like constantly being asked, do you have that one? I want to get that one. Or they would just order. They would go, can I get the Wolverine in an 8 by 10? I want the Wolverine in an 8 by 10. I want Deadpool in an 8 by 10. And we're like, oh, we don't have it. They're like, what? Oh no, And then the cool thing about that was, because it's higher, it's $20. Now they're faced with a choice. Do they spend more? Well, now there's this big group of people buying, and they're trying to get our attention because we're talking to someone else or selling to someone else, and they're over there. We can see them kind of out of our peripheral vision, like talking to their friend, like, it's $20, but I really want it, and they're going through that struggle. And I would say 2/3 of them paid the $20 to get the bigger one. So, because when we the first day we were talking like, well, maybe we need to offer all these in 8 by 10s. I think if we had, I think we would have made a lot less money. So that was an interesting thing that I had to learn by doing. The small stuff that's up close, the 8 by 10s, pulled them into the booth. And then when they got there, they would see the backdrop and they would see the one that they actually really wanted that wasn't on the 8 by 10 wall. Now, we definitely sold more 8 by 10s than 11 by 14s, but we sold a ton of 11 by 14s. In fact, we sold out of a bunch of prints. We sold out of, I took 30 Deadpools and only had 2 left at the end, so we almost sold out of that. Sold out of Jaws, sold out of Godzilla on the colored ones, sold out of Jack Skellington really fast, and sold out of, I'm drawing a blank on which ones, sold out of Rey from Star Wars. There's another one that I'm not thinking of, but we put little sold out post-it note stickers up there, and I think that was a good thing. And my booth was right next to Jed Henry, the guy that did Yu-Gi-Oh! Heroes. He's actually the guy that got me in, so thank you, Jed. And I got to watch him sell the whole time. And he did way better than we did. He always does. It's an amazing thing to watch. He'll go for hours of constantly selling. And his are expensive. His prints are $30 each. If you haven't looked up his, you should look up his the stuff that he's doing. He's the guy that did the Kickstarter where he raised $320,000. This is amazing. Got to bounce a lot of ideas off of him and asked him, is it bad to sell out? In his opinion, he thinks people are invested at that point in your booth that they'll bounce to another print. So that's his opinion on that one. Okay, so another thing was that a lot of people, interestingly enough, say they'll want your card. And the reason they want your card is they don't want to carry stuff home with them on the plane that'll get damaged. They want to order online, or at least they have the intention of ordering online. I'm suspicious that 1 out of 100 people will actually order something from you online. I think a lot of people ask for your card because it's a way to get away from your booth without buying something. So it's like an easy way to go, do you have a card? Oh, great. Thank you. Like I'm invested in you, but really I just want to leave right now, and And a lot of people, we talked to a lot of people that, this is another thing. I'm going to talk about this right now because I'm afraid I will forget. I didn't have it on my notes, but just as some of us were talking and pontificating about, as Comic-Cons get more and more popular, you're starting to get little ones springing up everywhere. And like almost every major city already has one, but now smaller cities are starting to get them. And we're just wondering, like, with people buying prints every year, most people aren't framing them. Are they going to kind of get tired of buying them, knowing that they've got all these ones from the previous years? And is that going to diminish sales a little bit? So anyway, just kind of a thing that we're starting to wonder. And I actually had people say that. People would say, well, I'm not going to buy because I haven't framed the ones from last year. But then other people would say, what I do is I just replace the ones. I'm tired of them, so I'll put them in a drawer and put new ones up. But I'll keep them and or maybe give them to someone else, or maybe put them back up somewhere. Who knows? So the card thing, it's an interesting thing. It's like a way out for people, I guess. And you're just going to be giving out a lot of cards. But then again, giving out cards I think is a necessary thing, because having your contact information where people can just get it. You never know who is an art director, someone that has a business or an opportunity, people that will become regular collectors of your work. So it's like a numbers game. My suggestion would be get cheap cards. You can design cards that look really nice, but that are really cheap. So for instance, I can get 1,000 cards for $20, and they look nice. And do I have one within reach? Dang it. I don't. Where are my cards? Anyway, I have these little square cards printed up. But again, I sold out of them. So I ordered more. So there's that. And then, what else was I going to say? I was going to say another thing was, for me, is that I took down my Etsy shop because my son was running, and I had to explain this to everybody because they're like, can I have your card? Okay, great, I'll buy online. I'm like, you have to buy here if you're going to get it, because I took down my Etsy shop. Even though Etsy's on the card, I don't do the post office. I run svslearn.com. I do freelance, and I do the Kickstarter video stuff, and I teach at the university, and I'm a dad, and I just don't have time. I'm not going to go to the post office for $5, because when it's all said and done, by the time you pay Etsy, by the time you pay for shipping supplies, by the time you pay for your print costs and what the cream that comes back, you're talking for each print is like $5 or $10 or something like that. And I'm not going to let one more thing run me. So, and I'm just, I could hire an assistant to do it, and that's what I probably will eventually do if I get enough demand. But for right now, I need to simplify my life, so I took it down. My son got a really good job, and he can't do it. He doesn't have time to do it. So I had to explain that to people, and that kind of sucked. But, because, some of those people probably would have bought. And then I got emails when I get to the hotel at night of people going, I got 2 emails from people. One was like, I really wanted that Godzilla print. I should have got it. And is there any way that we can work something out right now? And I'm like, I can't. I just have way too much to do. So anyway, okay, so let me talk a little bit about working with someone else. So one of the things that's hard about doing it on your own is you're on your own, right? You're bored. You're sitting there running your booth by yourself. That's tough. It is costly to have someone else there that needs to be paid, but if they're a really good person, then they can actually help to pay for themselves. Like, for instance, and this isn't going to be anybody, and you're not going to be able to talk a friend into doing this. They either have it or they don't. But my buddy Wayne is an amazing salesperson, and without being pushy, he has a way of upselling people. I'll bet that if I was doing it on my own, I'd have made somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000, and the extra money that bumped us up to the $7,300 was because of him upselling people. Like, they'd be looking at one print and you go, you know what goes really well with that is a family of characters. And they'd go, yeah, but I was thinking about just spending $10. And we already had it worked out, like that we would make a deal, And so he goes, I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you for this, and he would come down $5 or something. And then almost every time they'd go, really, you do that? Okay. All right, I'll do that. And almost, I would say he probably upsold somewhere between 50 and 75% of the sales. So just, that's something to think about. It was easy. I have a hard time doing that. It's just not natural to me. It's something I don't like to do. So he's really good at it. And so that really helped out a lot. The next thing I wanted to talk about was that I mentioned that I had sold out of Ray and I sold out of, Jack Skellington. The reason that I sold out was because I just didn't bring enough. I have them in the garage, which was killing me because I just didn't have enough faith that I needed to bring more of that stuff. But I wanted to talk about the one that I did for Ray for Star Wars. I liked it and everything, but it just, the idea that I came up with and the design, I felt like I could do better. So I was just doodling one day and I just got this idea that, I was like, BB-8, he really looks like a Hoppity Hop, which was a toy that I grew up with. You have the Hoppity Horse and Hoppity Hop. And Google him if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I was like, BB-8 is a Hoppity Hop. That's what he is. And so I put her on that, and so here she is right here. And this one I was actually drawing down there at in Phoenix, and when it got slow a little bit, I'd whip it out and start drawing, and people would see that. What's funny is I put it on the TV screen. This is another reason why I'm going to nix the TV. Is I had my iPad hooked up to the TV so people could see it out there. They never make the connection that I'm drawing on my iPad and that it's drawing on the screen. The people that would make the connection actually were kids. And so I remember 2 times where kids were like, Mom, he's drawing right there. And the mom's like, what are you talking about? See, look, he's drawing right there and it's up on the screen. And the mom would go, oh, you're right. Like kids are just, they're alert to that kind of stuff. But so I'd whip it out and draw, and then I'd have people that really just fell in love with it and wanted it. So I've got those printed up for Denver. But the reason I wanted to talk about that is that you can never, or you should never, be satisfied with your work. You should always have this constant desire to improve. And when you do, you'll find that you will constantly get better. Some people stagnate in their art, and I think it's because they just kind of get to a point where they're like, well, this is what I do, and I've arrived. And I did that, like 10 or 15 years ago. I was like, well, this is what I do. And that's the best way to kill your career, because as an artist, you have to be constantly improving, and you have to be constantly committed to your craft, and being able to say, this just isn't good enough. I can do better. Now, did people like the original one? Yeah, but I put them side by side on Facebook and asked people, which one do you like better? And I'd say it was about 90% of the people love this new design with Ray on the bouncing along, And so I printed up a bunch of those. I'll take those to Denver. I'll probably make a little report on how those did. But I'm already betting that they'll do really well. So I think that's something that's super important, is to constantly, push and never be satisfied. So in the advice, I already talked about branding, and if I had received this talk, like what I'm saying right now, when I was first starting out, I probably wouldn't know what I was talking about. But basically, it's like this. Your booth needs to look different. It needs to look consistent. That's why we did really well. It was, the artwork stood out because it was, like I've talked about, like it was consistent. I've been drawing for a long time. So the craft was towards the higher end of what was there. There was tons of amazing artists there, but there were also a lot of artists that were just starting out, and you could tell. So it was easy for me to kind of shine because there were tons of artists that were basically starting out, right? But you can get there, and you just need to push and work. And I'm not, it's hard for me to say that because I'm always worried that somebody's going to say, well, oh, he thinks he's all that. And all. Look, I've been doing this for 25 years professionally, if I, and making a living at this. So I'm probably decent. That's all I'm saying. Were there people there that have amazing art that's better than mine? Absolutely. Tons of really good guys and gals, some amazing artists, but also I would say at least half of them look like they were more on the beginning level, and maybe 10 to 20% look like they never went to school and were really beginners. And so again, that part was pretty easy. Now, concept is king. So concept with your artwork, if you just do an amazing job of doing a Wolverine that just looks like Wolverine, well, guess what? Everybody has a Wolverine. So when I'm talking about branding, I'm talking about the thing that encompasses everything: the overall look of your booth, the overall content of your booth, the overall concept of your art, everything playing in together where you have the same product over and over and over again. Like, imagine going into, I don't know, like my wife, she likes Bath and Body Works. She likes that store. So when I go in there, all the products look like they match in there. That's what I'm talking about, branding your booth. It needs to look like, you're creating a store, right? That's what you're doing. You're creating a mini store. So you have to act like an entrepreneur that's creating a store. And your products need to look the same so that when people come in, they're like, oh, this is really cool. Oh, and it's a family of a body of work that matches. So that branding, I think, was the biggest difference. And I think we'll see days or conventions where we do better than we did in Phoenix. The next thing I would say is, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we figure it's going to cost us about $2,000 to go to a show out of town that's within 500 or 600 miles. So that makes your local shows really valuable, the ones that you can just drive to and then drive back home each night, because you're not paying for the hotel and you're not having to go out to eat, and your fuel costs and your driving costs and all that. So you can afford to cut your teeth and learn on those smaller shows. You're not going to get zapped with those big bills that you're trying to pay off, right? So I would say, if you're thinking about doing this, try really hard to get into your local shows, and there's smaller ones too. The smaller ones, I think, are probably even more valuable. Even though you're probably, maybe have a good chance of not making a lot of money. The table costs are smaller. You're just not going to spend a ton of money, but you're going to be able to go through the motions and look at it as dry runs for the bigger shows. Some shows that we're actually looking at, I don't think I'll go to, but my friend Wayne might take my prints to. Is there's shows in Reno, there's shows in Colorado Springs, or shows, a show in Colorado Springs. Another thing is we got invited to a bunch of shows while we were down there that we probably will never go to, like Tucson. It's just so far away. It's like another hour or two beyond Phoenix. Palm Springs, and a few others. Their representatives from those cons were there inviting artists, and then we had them at our booth going, please come to our con. We're small, but we're growing, and your stuff would do really well there. And they, obviously they want people there. But the other thing I would say as advice is, again, you have to get in, and I'll end on this, but you really have to get into the mindset of the fact that if you're going to be successful in this, so for instance, and I don't think that my friend Jed will mind. I hope he doesn't mind. But the guy, he makes a ton of money, like well into 5 figures at every show. And I think some of his top shows, he's made $25,000. I know that. So, you really can. There are people that make a good living doing this. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to do 20 shows a year. I only want to do 4 or 5. It's a side thing for me. It's really fun. It's super fun interacting with people. It's super fun hearing people talk about your art. It's fun to get out and do a road trip. So there's a lot of benefits for me. Again, it got me the book assignment that I'm going to be working on this summer and into the fall. It got me to branch out of what I normally do. I mean, I saw color as the only way to solve a problem, and now I'm looking at art options a lot differently. So it's really, you could look at it and say, well, it really helped me to grow in so many different ways, not only in business but also in my actual art that I'm creating. So I think that you have to create a long-term business plan. Like if you're going to start a restaurant, you don't go, well, if we don't make it, if we don't sell a lot in this first month, we're just going to close. I mean, like people that start a restaurant, they usually have a 3 to 5 year plan, and they know that there's a time where they're going to tap out. If they just can't make their calls, in 3 years or so, and the bank is, wanting to get their, the loan paid off, obviously, and if they can't make those loan payments, eventually it's just going to come crumbling down. And most restaurants fail. Most businesses fail. I would probably say that most people that try to make money at Comic-Cons fail. That's the reality. When I started out, I had no idea if we were ever going to be profitable. After this last convention, I know we can. I'm sure we will at every show now because we figured it out. But it took 4 shows to do that. So I think that if you don't have a long-term goal, then you could either be stopping something before it really gets a chance to get started, before you really learn the lessons. But it also could be, now with that, I would also say this, like I've seen some people that I see them on Facebook, and I've talked to some of them, and they're planning to sell their work at conventions, and I look at what they're planning to do, and based on what I know, I have a pretty good feeling that they're going to fail, pretty miserably. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Ultimately, I think it's a good thing because, like some people will fail and then they'll just never do it again. And part of me thinks if that's the way you handle that, then maybe you're not cut out for being an entrepreneur. I think one thing that most entrepreneurs have in common is tons of failure and getting right back in it and going, oh, I know what I need to do. And that's something that I don't think you can teach. I think you can develop it for sure. I was never super entrepreneurial when I was a kid or when I was going to college or anything like that. But I always thought, gosh, you can, if you do something really cool, you could really get paid, and it could be really, really neat, and so, and that's one of the reasons why I've started so many things is because I know that it works if you stick with it, and if you're smart, and if you, I'm not saying I'm smart, but smart from being dumb so many times that eventually I've gotten things right. I guess I would say it that way, from getting beat up so many times. But so I would say the long-term plan should be to look at it like a learning experience. Like you're trying to learn, and you're going to take the things that you learn, and you're going to hone it, and you're going to change things up, and then you're going to try again, and you're going to see if some of the changes made a difference. Again, if you want to know what we're doing for a lot of these shows, go back and look at some of the first videos, because I talk a lot about the different things that we're doing. There probably will be a time where I do a more in-depth video on everything. I still, I feel like in Phoenix, I told my buddy Wayne, I said I give us about a B or B plus as far as our setup goes, as far as everything that we're doing. And I think there's still a lot of room to improve, but I think we're getting close to nailing it in just after 4 shows. And I think that's because each time, being really careful to look and see what worked and what wasn't working, and being really analytical about it. I would say that probably a big part of me got lucky too, in that, I didn't jump into doing Comic Cons when they first started. I was able to kind of look and see what other people were doing to make a conscious decision to try to brand myself differently. And I think there's a lot of room for that. I think that you can do something that you can do all kinds of things that people aren't thinking of. But if you go walk through Comic-Con and just see the booth after booth of tons of prints that all look the same and no real graphical element that really will shock somebody or stop them in their tracks. And again, signage can do that. Doing something big. I have a bunch of ideas of things that I could do differently if I wasn't doing what I'm already doing now. Maybe using one thematic color throughout your booth structure. I mean, look and see what stores, go through the mall and see how stores are branding themselves and how they're making themselves look different and looking like, a professional thing. I think another thing that I wanted to talk about to finish with is to say another piece of advice is as soon as you can afford 2 tables, I think it's really worth it to do that. And the reason for that is there is a perception. And when you look the same as everybody else with their one table, then it looks like you fit in with the lower, I don't want to say it's lower class or anything like that, because it's not, but I mean, like, I think there's a perception that if you can afford 2 tables, like whenever I'm walking around, if I see somebody with 2 tables, I'm like, now there's someone who is betting twice as much money that their stuff is going to sell, so they have to sell more. And I've never seen anybody with 2 tables that look like a rank amateur, but every rank amateur has 1 table. So I would say as soon as you can afford 2 tables and you can actually stock it and fill it and make it look good, you should probably keep that in mind, because I think that's another reason why we stop people, is because our space is twice as big and it's all branded the same, and it's really enough to really be eye-catching. I mean, it takes a while for people to walk past 2 tables, whereas 1 table, you're just past it right away, So there you go. And I really hope that this video helps any of you guys who are thinking of selling at a Comic-Con. And maybe before I wrap up, I'll also mention, I get people that ask, like, well, how do I know if I'm ready? How many pieces should I have? Things like that. Those are really questions that I don't think I'm qualified to answer, because, I think, okay, so you need more than 10. Let's say that. Maybe 20 to 30 for a single table. Maybe depending on the size, maybe 30, 40, or 50 for a bigger table, or for 2 tables or something like that. But again, it's not something that you're going to get overnight, but it's something that you could be working on for a year or 2 before you do your first show. But I do think that, like, imagine you're trying to, again, let's go to the restaurant analogy. You're trying to open a restaurant. Well, you're not going to spend a month and then open a restaurant. You're going to be planning for a year or 2. And a lot of people, when they open a restaurant, they'll actually buy a food truck first and run that. It's a lot cheaper to fail in a food truck than it is to fail in a brick and mortar store with all the bills and the rents and the utilities and everything that comes with it. So, again, think of yourself as an entrepreneur. Think of yourself as opening a store. Just because your store is portable, just because your store happens to open in a Comic-Con, doesn't make it any less of a store. Just because it's not open 365 days a year, it's still a store. So treat it like that. It's something you have to prepare for over time. But again, don't be afraid to fail, because you're not going to nail it you on the first one. You're not going to probably nail it on the second or third one. It might take you 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. At least it took me 4, and still more, because we're making more changes. We're actually making some display racks that you can spin around now, because we had a tower, and I think it's in the video, like a triangle tower that we made out of the mesh squares, and we put artwork on that. But we constantly noticed that people were trying to turn it, trying to spin it, and they would grab it and it didn't move, and they're like, oh, it doesn't spin. So people know what to do with that, and we could get more work on there to spin. And the reason that that's important is when it gets crowded and the aisles are totally packed, we've got all of our artwork in the book, the flip book, and we've got all of our artwork in the browsing rack. But there were a lot of times where the flip book was being flipped through, the browsing rack was being browsed, and then someone was standing over by the tower and they're trying to spin it. And if they could see all of the 8x10s on that, which we could get if we had a 4-sided tower, or most of them, we probably can't get all of them in there, we get most of them in there, then that's just one more thing where that person might see the print that they're looking for. And again, all these little tweaks that you do is just going to gradually increase your sales and increase your sales more and more, making it more profitable, making you more able to do it, giving you the freedom to maybe even do it full time, quit your job. I mean, like, Jed, he does this full time. He's also working on a video game, but he does like 20 shows a year. He doesn't go to all of them himself. Sometimes he sends one of his friends to run it. Sometimes he's at 2 shows at the same time, with someone running another booth somewhere else. And again, it's extremely lucrative for some people, and once they dial it in and nail it like he has. So anyway, hope this helps. Don't subscribe unless you want to see more stuff like this. See you on the next video.